Killing is fun. In-game, of course. But what if there was something more? A somewhat hidden treasure of achieving never-seen-before amounts of dopamine. A new way to destroy your opponents. Something so satisfying, so beautiful, that it might be its own form of art. Well, buckle up, because I've got something just for you. It's called playing heavy on dust ball. I mean, airshots. Today we are talking about airshots. Sorry. Hello everyone and welcome to the darkest of depths on the internet called my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about a very popular form of devastating enemy gamers called airshots. Why are they so powerful? How do I achieve the so-called airshot? What even counts as an airshot? How is the Polish chief of police not fired from his job after firing a 90mm grenade launcher in his own office? These are all great questions that we will try to answer in today's video. But first, have you ever considered subscribing? It doesn't cost you anything, but it will make my day way better. Also, if you don't subscribe, this hamster will die. The choice is yours. So, what even counts as an airshot? This is a very misleading phrase, as not all forms of shooting can count as an airshot. Of course, it's not any kind of built-in mechanic in-game, but rather a scenario made up by gamers to make them feel a little bit better about themselves after achieving something slightly more difficult than peeling a banana. A simple hit-scan weapon, that is, any kind of weapon that after shooting will do damage at the pointed target in the exact same moment of you pressing the fire button, don't count towards the art of airshotting. Yes, it's still more impressive than shooting the target that was just walking around, but there is no practical difference between you shooting a walking target than shooting a target in the air. You just point your mouse on the enemy and shoot, like you'd normally do. What does count as an airshot is first off using a projectile type of damage. It is any form of damage that has some kind of travel time towards the aimed location. Primary example being Farah's rocket launcher. The difficulty can be amplified even more if your projectiles are affected by gravity, aka arcing projectiles, like Junkrat's grenade launcher. The second condition that has to be met in order to achieve an airshot is that your target, as the name implies, must be in the air. And we are not talking simple hops from here and there, we are talking airtime, the height, the dynamic movement of your target. There is also a third condition to get to the full airshot experience, but we will get to it later. First, let's provide some examples on what is or isn't an airshot. In general, enemy players move on two axes. Imagine the floor of a map is the X and Y axis, therefore, if the enemy player walks around, they only make you aim in those two dimensions. The airshot occurs when you hit your target with a projectile type of a weapon, and there is an additional challenge of the third axis, the Z axis. This one represents the height, and as we established before, the simple jumps do not provide big enough influence on the Z-axis to consider them an additional challenge. Enemies dropping down to other locations, using abilities that affect their Z-axis, and even usage of bouncing pads all count towards the additional challenge on the Z-axis. With that in mind, this is not an airshot, but this is an airshot. Not an airshot, airshot. You get the drill. The third condition that I mentioned before to get the fullest airshot experience is not just hitting the target, but rather dealing the final blow, or at least causing the target to take lethal damage afterwards. Just hitting a very difficult projectile shot is satisfying, but that satisfaction quickly washes away as your target hides, gets healed, and comes back. It is only when you know that your insane skills cause the enemy player to get the punishment of waiting for a respawn. The airshots also affect the mentality of the killed player, as they now know they should fear the space they thought was safe. If the sky isn't safe, they are forced to play behind covers, making them less aggressive, so in other words, you dominating them. Showing you are the real alpha in the lobby, and all it took was hitting a nice shot. Lastly, how does one achieve an airshot? The answer that will probably disappoint you is pure practice and skill. There is no shortcut. This isn't a cheesy strategy that any Bob can look up on YouTube and win games because he abuses a mechanic that he learned in 5 minutes. Airshots require huge amounts of knowledge. It doesn't look like it when other people do it, but let's quickly go through what actually matters when lining up the perfect shot before actually shooting. First is the skill of reading. This sounds stupid because we are talking about a video game mechanic after all, but hear me out. You must learn to understand how the enemy players will react in certain situations. If the enemies are low on health, they might play towards cover, so reading their movement and pre-aiming in the direction of the cover they are closest to is the smartest option. If the player's skill isn't too great, then their movement might be more predictable and irrational, so in that case apply the opposite knowledge, pre-aim the other side, because a newbie will not think to hide from you at all they think about is getting kills and not surviving. Analyze what abilities the target has in their disposal. If the enemy is playing Pharah, then expect him to use his jets mid-flight. So don't aim lower, because you must expect that he will not fall down. All of those things are linked into reading the other players, and you can clearly see how many factors come into play in just this one skill. But there is even more. Secondly, there is the knowledge about yourself. You must know how your weapon and abilities act, how fast your projectiles travel, or how will they arc mid-flight. Junkrat can be one of the hardest heroes to land the airshots on, but boy, let me tell you, is it rewarding. You can also take into consideration if you have any movement abilities at your disposal to potentially gap close and secure a safer airshot. And remember that all of the heroes are different, with variable projectile speeds, abilities, and so on. Thirdly is the skill of aiming itself. Even if you are aware and know everything about yourself, the enemy, the map, you won't achieve anything if your skill doesn't back it up. The precise mouse or joystick movement, the sharp flicks, or even dynamic gameplay all play a role in achieving airshots. The first two things can be learned outside the game by watching some tutorials or observing how others behave, but this one is strictly on you. Only you can improve your own aiming skills and show everyone around you who is the real alpha, the master of the skies, the one who predicts the future, the best of the best. So, would you like to master the art of airshots? Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If it helped you in any way, shape or form, or if you learned something new, then that's great. I'm glad I could bring something new to the table. That would be it for today, so I kindly ask you, since you got this far to the video, to maybe leave a like on the video, and as always, thanks for watching, have a lovely day, bye bye.